This is probably one of the most important things in game development, and nobody's talking about it. Regardless if you're following my series or not, this is important to anybody making a game, specifically if you're making a game in Unreal Engine. And we're talking about server hosting. Okay, this is something, it's the final piece of this puzzle that I've been looking for, or trying to figure out. I've been trying to figure out how in the world am I going to host my game, and you can't find any documentation on it, nothing. And so I've spent months in the back of my head trying to figure it out, and I actually spent probably 2 or 3 roughly weeks actually finding a solution, a way that I can put my game online and anybody can join it. And I'm doing this is what you're seeing right now. You're seeing two different rounds of gameplay with utilizing GameLift. So this AWS GameLift. And so this isn't being hosted on my computer. I was playing on my computer with 2 other people, but the actual server, it was not located, at my house or anything like that. It's being hosted, I think, somewhere in Ohio, and I'm in Missouri. So, and I wasn't getting very much game lag. Actually, that was a game lag test right there that we were working on. But so this is what I was working on. And I tried figuring out it all on my own, and I just couldn't do it. So I had to look elsewhere, and I found a plugin that is brand new on the Unreal Marketplace, and it takes a lot of the the C++ code that was required to get GameLift to work, and it's put it into blueprints, and it's a lot easier to use. And so to show you what I'm talking about, here, let me pause this real quick and bring this over. Okay, this is brand new on the marketplace, and the only way to find it, you can't even type in GameLift. You have to type in like AWS GameLift, and then I think one of his plugins will pop up, and then you got to click his name, and then both of these will pop up. These right here, these were a lifesaver, and you have to have both of them to make it all work together. But this was how I was able to get my game onto AWS with GameLift. I tried doing it the normal way, how their tutorials, and guess what? There are no tutorials. There's like a little bit of documentation, and it's just absolutely god awful. So I used this, and even with this, though, it was extremely difficult. There was tons of ways you could mess up, and it wasn't that the plugin was bad. The plugin's really good. It's just that it's a very complicated and involved process, and I see absolutely no tutorials on it. So what I decided that I'm going to do is I was going to hold off on doing any tutorials on this because this is like the last step. But I was really upset that I couldn't figure it out, this last step. Even when I was when I had made my game, I was hosting it. Yeah, I was hosting on a server, but it was like one instance, and if it went down, the whole thing went down. If this goes down, it'll spring back up. Okay, I mean, this is like it's practically invincible. And there's an example right there. I had a key code, or I had a key that I would press, and it would simulate the whole server being shut down. And you just saw right there, it just popped right back up. So this is like voodoo. I mean, this is awesome. But I couldn't do it on my own. So I went out and I got that plugin. But before I got it, I knew it was going to be complicated. So I contacted the guy who made it, and I'm like, man, I don't see any documentation or tutorials. I need something. Because I'm not going to be able to figure out even with this plugin. And you know what he did? He went out and he made, it was like a 3-hour tutorial. And it's on YouTube, and I'm going to link to it. But he doesn't speak English, I don't think. So there's no audio. So even with that, it was really confusing. And I was constantly emailing him, and we were using a translator. I guess he's using some, I guess Google has a translator. I didn't know that. But so we could communicate emails. I probably sent like 15, 16 emails back and forth. Hey, how do you do this? Hey, how do you do that? and there was like a bunch of little questions I had and all these little things. But anyway, long story short, what I'm getting at is I am going to basically walk through the process of getting your game on GameLift. And why I'm doing this now and not saving it to the very end is because I discovered a lot of things like dealing with server lag, because there's always going to be that, and things testing it like this. You need to be testing it in the environment that it's going to be in. Even though we're very early on in the game, actually this is a good thing. This is how we're going to get around a lot of our bugs, because we couldn't really test what we were doing. And if there's anything I've learned, it's that you need to be testing in the environment that the game is going to be played, because like as you can see, let me just interrupt myself and give you a prime example. So like you see him, we were testing right there, stuff shutting down and popping up. Let me give you a good example. So let me walk you through this. So this green guy here, when we were moving around, I started noticing that there was some lag in my character. Let me get the other video and I can show you what type of lag it was. Start this over. So I want you to see where I was, and it was annoying. It was to the point to where I would say it's unplayable, and I think it was about right here. Yeah. Okay. So look at now. My screen might not be doing it justice, but as he's moving up, you can see that the weapon it's jerking. It's going da 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 da. I mean, and to the point to where you couldn't play it. Never mind the hand that's not attached. We can fix that later. The left hand. That's not the problem. The problem is it's jerking back and forth. So I was like, oh my gosh, AWS has lag. What's the problem? I never noticed this on my first person, game, and that's because I was thinking about it wrong. Whether you're going to be doing, third and first person or whatever, that first person mesh, you never see it, because it's only being rendered on the client, and so therefore it's never going to the server. So there's no lag. That's why first person games, you're not gonna notice your hands having lag, if that makes sense. So what I went ahead did was, when I made it so when you were playing, there were actually two meshes. There's the mesh that you see, and I changed the color of them so that way you knew right away you were seeing a client. So there's actually two meshes here. So the green mesh is a client mesh. Now look at how smooth it is. See, and this is still on the game is being played on the server, but he's smooth because his mesh is only being played on the client. He's got another gray mesh, just like these other guys. These guys are also green. If you were to look at their computer screen when they were playing, they're also green. But the server mesh of the character is the gray, the white color. So it was little things like that had I just been in our little vacuum where I'm working on a computer or a server that's nearby, I would have never thought about that lag. And see, in the other character lag, it's not going to bother you as much because you're always going to have a little bit depending on tick rates and all these other things. But if it's your main character, it's really important that he's nice and smooth. So you're going to want to make a mesh that only you see that's... Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, but what I'm getting at is it's very important that we establish where we're going to be hosting our game so that way we can test. Now, I'm not saying you have to use AWS. I'm not even 110% sure I'm going to use AWS or GameLift, but I can't help but think, okay, Amazon's not going anywhere. So that's pretty solid. I tried G-Portal. I tried talking to them. That's where... I think Arc has their stuff, and a lot of other people have their stuff, and I wasn't getting the customer service, the contact, unless I was like trying to just do like a game that's already out. But like doing my own game as an indie developer, I wasn't getting any. I emailed them and I didn't get anything back. Maybe I emailed the wrong person. I don't know. But with AWS, it seems bigger. So. I'm not saying that they had better customer service, but there just seemed to be more out there more documentation. Very little, but there's still more than what I saw other places, if that makes sense. And then I also, with this plugin, had somebody that I finally could talk to about hosting my game, and how to do that. So what I want to do, oh, by the way, I think Fortnite uses AWS, and I think Bethesda does. A lot of companies, a lot of places do. A lot of game stuff do. It's kind of like they're the big guys. And so that being said, with them being like pro gear and pro stuff, it's not very user intuitive. A lot of command line, a lot of there can be a lot of Linux stuff and all this other things. So this is why, even though I'm not very, I don't really understand all the ins and outs of hosting this, I think I still need to do some sort of walkthrough, some sort of tutorial, because there is nothing out there. In fact, the videos that this developer who made the plugin did is the only thing that I've seen so far. I just can't believe that nobody's out there doing it. And I think it's because once you get to that level that you're hosting games, you're pretty much doing this as your job, and so you kind of jump the gap from just a guy toying around to, okay, we actually have made a game and now we want to deploy it. How do we professionally deploy it? Well, you do it on stuff like GameLift, and so. With that being said, it's not going to be nice and user-friendly like your Epic launcher and have all those nice little things. It's kind of like working with, it's like when we were working with the source code and with Unreal Engine, it's not very user-friendly. So that's why we need to go ahead and do a tutorial. And it's not going to be nice and smooth because I don't know all the ins and outs. It's going to be bumpy. So how I'm looking at this is it's almost going to be more for me. It's going to be me documenting what I did, because there were so many damn steps in this, and that I'm not going to remember when we get to it in 6 months, which is about probably the time period it's going to be before our game is really ready to be hosted. I'm not going to remember everything I did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link this guy's tutorials, the developer's tutorials for the plugin, and I'm going to link his stuff and comment on his stuff, but I'm also going to have my own little walkthrough to go along with it, and it's really going to be a refresher. Down the road, we might go do it, super nice, polished, whatever, where, I know what I'm talking about and everything, but I really need to get some sort of documentation down and something that I can reference later on. So that's where it's going to go, and that's what I've been spending the last couple of weeks on. If you're following this in real time, this development, you're probably been wondering, well, where has he been? I have not stopped working on this stuff, like from I think the last video, or even before the last video I loaded. Like before that, I was working on stuff. And I think almost every spare moment I'm working on just trying to get this stuff developed. So I told you guys before, if you don't hear from me, it's because I'm neck deep in something. I definitely was. So let me talk a little bit about how this is configured, so you can kind of know what to expect. First off, when I was watching the tutorial, the GameLift tutorial, I noticed that the developer was using menus I'd never even seen before, and like the device manager. Maybe you've used this. I've never freaking used this. I didn't know what this was. And you can see right here, I got a little Linux machine hooked up to it, and basically, instead of using Visual Studio to compile the servers and everything like that, you can do it right from here. And it's not very go look this up, man. You look up Device Manager and you see how much documentation from Epic that you can find. You're not going to find a whole lot. You might find a page here or there that talks briefly about it, but really not what it is, how it works. And it works in conjunction with this project launcher. And so from there, you could launch your servers and you can launch Linux servers, but this isn't just an independent system. This is actually linking to a virtual machine. So your first question might be, why are you even using Linux? Like, what are you using this for? Well, with GameLift, when you can make a Windows version of your server and you can make a Linux version of your server, but the Linux is comparatively it's super cheaper than the Windows version. The Windows version, I want to say it's like either double or triple the price to host. And so you're saying, oh, wait a second, there's going to be cost involved. Well, GameLift gives you like your first year or so is supposedly free, so you can try it out and then you can cancel. And there's like a free tier. Most places have some sort of cost. I haven't been charged anything, and I've been testing this now for at least a week. I have no charge at all, so you can test all this stuff. I think they just need to sign up thing. And anywhere else, I would be uncomfortable giving my information, but I've already got an Amazon account, right? I already do my stuff on Amazon, so I figure AWS, it's all affiliated. I felt comfortable with it. Anyway, long story short, Linux is significantly cheaper, but it's significantly more complex to set up. So basically this thing is connecting to, that's a local IP address in my to my virtual machine. So if you don't know what a virtual machine is, you need to research that, because we're going to jump right in with virtual machines. And I use VMware, so that's what I'm going to be using. And I have an Ubuntu, however the heck you say it. It's the recommended version. Epic has a recommended version that they use. I'm going to cover all that, and that's what the tutorial is going to be more so about. I'm not going to necessarily be able to do a step by step, because there's so many things that my system, it's fragile almost. I had to carefully get all of the programs syncing and working and recognizing each other, because, like, for example, like just uploading to GameLift, there's a command line program that has to be configured, and then you have to put in the information exactly right, and then it will upload it. And I know there's some people out there that they're used to this, no big deal, but not if you're watching this video, you're probably not. And so if it was intimidating to me and confusing to me, I think a lot of people are going to find it confusing. So I want to be the bridge between that confusion and this awesomeness that is, GameLift. And I'm not just saying GameLift, I just mean hosting your freaking game. Like, so a lot of people maybe just starting out don't even know. I've been rambling on and on and on. I didn't even really cover the basics about like what's going on, like what's different about, why can't you use Steam or something like that? Like, well, because there's other people that have left comments like, why haven't, let's use the Steam plugin, because there's this advanced sessions plugin that can use Steam to search for other people playing your game. And so that's really what all that Steam does. Now, maybe they have some sort of server hosting. I don't know of it. Okay, maybe Steam does, but they have a way so you can search. Because let's say you play your game and you want to know if there's other people to join playing your game, or there's a server, you start a server somewhere. The only way you guys can find each other through all the mess of IP addresses on the internet is to have like a place you can search for them all at. And that's what Steam does. It has like a list of everybody who's playing a particular game, and then you can go and find that game and then you can join it. So AWS has that, it's built in. Okay, so now there's some people that can sync in some sort of Steam thing, so you can use Steam in conjunction with this, but that's over my head. I don't even know how that all goes down. So anyway, what I'm getting at is this isn't just searching for other people playing your game. It's actually hosting your game. It's a platform where you can upload your server files to and join it, and other people can join it, and you can configure it almost infinitely. You can get down to the different IP addresses of people that can join your game and stuff like that. So there was more I wanted to say, but I wanted to make sure that anybody who's looking for it, you can kind of come in here and look through and get some basic information about it. But there's, like I said, there's very little stuff. So somebody's probably going to be asking me, one of the first comments is going to be, hey, do I have to buy the plugin on the marketplace? And the answer is no. you don't. I went ahead and tried it without buying it, and I did the little walkthrough. There's even an Amazon plugin on the marketplace that's free, but it's not really an Amazon plugin. It's a link to that site that I was just showing you, and it gives you the steps that you can compile the plugin yourself and do all this other confusing stuff. I destroyed 2 engines doing it. Okay, I totally tanked 2 of my engines from source because I didn't know what I was doing. I was compiling stuff and I was putting folders in the wrong spot, and it would corrupt other folders within my engine. It was pretty much the biggest headache. Maybe down the road I'll eventually be confident enough to figure out whatever the heck they want you to do to compile that server yourself, but I just couldn't figure it out. And I spent a very long time trying to figure it out. So if somebody knows, let me know. But this plugin was comparatively, it was a lot easier. So you'll notice, though, it's only for Unreal Engine version 21. So you'll have to change your engine version to version 21, which we already did. We already talked about it, how to upgrade your engine. But there is a unique process. Like, you have to download the generic version of 421. That way you can download the plugin, take those plugin folders, put it into a source version of 421, and you can see already we're getting into complexities. So anyway, that's what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be building the Linux server, but it can be accessed from Windows computers. The clients are all Windows. Okay, so don't think that I'm saying, our users are going to be using, Linux. No, just the server, just because it's cheaper. I'm also going to show you how to do a Windows server too, because the only way I could initially figure it out was to build the Windows server. And it's different. There are files that have to get added, and you would never know this. There are files that have to get added onto your Windows Server files that, if it wasn't for the guy who made this plugin, I would have never been able to figure out that these files needed to be added to my file structure to get the whole thing to work. Anyway, we're going to be covering that too. So you get the idea where this is going. So I don't know if it's going to be, I'm going to kind of work through a structure of, a time period of, I don't know, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks to get kind of some sort of plan down, reconfigure my steps, think of everything that I did. I tried to write down as much as I could, but there's a lot of stuff, man. There's a whole lot of stuff. But this is it. This is the final piece of the puzzle that I couldn't figure out. And it's done. I beat the final boss of the game, right? So we're here. So I know all of the things required to make a game. All the other stuff is going to be easy in comparison. If you can get this, if you can get your game running on this platform, you can make your own game, man. It's not going to be difficult to do all the other stuff. This is getting all these configurations 10 times harder than some of the stuff people are asking about. Like, we're going to make it first person. Dude, yes, that's going to be easy peasy compared to all this stuff that we're going to do here in the next session of videos. And I wanted to do this because I feel like, not that there's very many multiplayer tutorials out there, but there are some, and you can reference those. There's nothing that I can find on configuring GameLift or any other server setup, dedicated server setup, and I mean hosting for that matter. And all the different calls, like this thing is talking to Amazon, telling it, hey, the server's healthy, and you got to call those commands, or that way it knows when it's down. It's checking how many people are in there, and you have to make those calls so it knows to expand. That's the thing. So I didn't even think about this. So like if you needed more instances, or you needed, let's say your game got really big, and you needed more servers running, it'll automatically spin that stuff up for you. I mean, you can say, I want to have such and such, I want to have, 20 instances of the game, and it'll do that. it will do all that stuff, so you're not constantly having to manage all these various things. So it's something to think about. I'm sure there's other platforms that do those sort of things, but once again, no documentation. How the heck are any of us going to know? So that's the update. That's where we are. There's going to be more to come, but it's going to be slower. It's going to be down the road, because I honestly, this is uncharted territory. Then once this is done, once we get all this configured, we'll go back and do the easy stuff, do the regular multiplayer stuff, the scoring, all the little animations, all that stuff. Like I said, very easy comparatively, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff. See, doing more of those tests, more lag tests. But it'll be stuff like this, like discovering that we're going to need a client mesh. So really, in the end, we're going to have, like 3 meshes. We'll have a first-person arms. You'll have a third-person client mesh. And then you'll have your third-person server mesh. So it's going to be discovering that we need things like that. It's going to be important to test this constantly in GameLift, so we can say, okay, here's how it's going to end up. Another thing I noticed while we're talking about it, like when I was shooting, and this one doesn't have it because I updated it after I did this video. When I was shooting, I noticed the muzzle flash wasn't happening exactly when I would push the mouse shooting button, which was it just made it didn't feel right. It felt like there was a lag, and that's what it was. And so even the muzzle flash, I made it a client version of the muzzle flash, and the server has its own muzzle flash. And so in the variables, there's client variables that control things. So that way, when he moves, he's not waiting for the server to tell him this value has been updated. So there's a lot more there than I initially put into the other version of the game. So yeah, lots of stuff like that. So anyway, I think that's about it. That's what I wanted to cover. More to come, but it's going to be a little delayed because I really want to get this stuff documented properly. So that's it for now. I'm going to try and update Facebook a little bit better to give you guys updates as to what I'm working on, so that way you're not totally wondering what's going on. But like I said, man, I barely took any breaks at all. And this is the old version. You can tell this is with the server mesh, and if you were playing it, you can see it there a little bit. If you were playing it, you'd really notice, okay, there's a little bit of lag, but we can fix those problems. So it's good we tested it. I know I'm talking over myself and interrupting myself, so I think that means it's a time to end this video. So anyway, if you have any questions, please ask me. I like the questions, and I like the comments. Oh, there was one guy. And I'll tell you what, man, at first, he was like totally, I never seen a guy comment so many times on all my videos about little tips and all this sort of stuff. But one of them was really, really good. A lot of them were good. There was one really good one. He said, he was talking about mouse input, and he was like, it was always firing. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not always firing. It's only, going when you're moving the mouse. Well, I found out I was wrong. So I went back and I corrected some of the code, and we're going to do this in these future tutorials, and I optimized the mouse code. So the only stuff going to the server is stuff that's being updated. So only when you're moving like up and down like this will that data being sent over the server. So that way it's not constantly spitting information into that server that it has to digest. So in other words, keep commenting. I like it. And this whole experience taught me something too. Like I got to feel like the guy who didn't know anything, and I didn't. And here I am. I felt like I was bugging the developer, and maybe I was, because every little thing I was having to ask him. I was like baby steps, man. I had to ask him every little thing, and I felt uncomfortable. So if you may feel that way, like you're going to ask a stupid question, don't feel that way, man, because there's probably a bunch of other people that have the same question, and when you ask it, that question gets answered. That everybody, some people may be too afraid to ask. They don't want to look like they don't know what's going on. Well, it just got to the point with me where it's like, I have to know how this works. Or, I don't care if I'm going to ask a basic question about Linux, even though he doesn't have really anything to do with Linux. He had the answer, and he provided it for me. And it was one of those things like, thank God I asked, because there was no way I would have figured that out. Just no way. So I'm in the same boat you are too, with things. I might be further down the road in some things. You might be further down the road in other things. So us sharing information is really good, because I learned stuff, and we just don't fear saying, asking stuff, because everybody will have that question. So anyway, I know I said I was done 5 minutes ago, but now I am done. So I'll see you guys on the next one.